nation's premier source on health, beauty, and wellness. Detroit Nation with Dr. B. Elayne Arterbery. Lifestyle driven.
Hi, this is Dr. Arterbery with Detroit Nation, bringing you the latest in beauty, health, and wellness. Welcome to the show today. Today's guest is Greg Baise, the Public Program Coordinator for the Museum of Contemporary Art in Midtown Detroit, or otherwise known as MOCAD. I love that acronym. Welcome, Greg. I'm so glad you're here today.
Thanks for having me here.
Tell me a little bit about yourself, and then tell me a little bit about the museum.
Sure. I've been involved in culture and culture promotion since the early 90s.
Concert promotion, I heard.
Yes. That's how I started out, was as a concert promoter, promoting musicians from around the world, people who I loved. A lot of times it was a labor of love. But I managed to turn it into a career. I worked at different venues around town. I worked at the Majestic Theater Center, and also I helped open the Crowfoot.
I love the Crowfoot. It's one of my favorite places.
Yeah. And at both places, I had lots of opportunities to be experimental, because that's where my heart is. My listening tastes are global. I go all around the world in a variety of genres too. And the opportunity to work at MOCAD came up, and I took it, because at MOCAD, I've got kind of carte blanche to do anything. I can do, something like a conventional, like arty rock and roll band, but I can also do experimental sound art, folk music from around the world, all kinds of different things.
So tell me what you do. I'm so fascinated by this. We were talking before the show about how museums have to really reach out and become part of the community. And that's sort of your job. You're a curator of public programs, so it's things in and out of the museum.
Public programs is, it's the performing arts. So it's music, it's dance, it's theater, it's performance art, it's spoken word, it's literature. And we also also show films, and also organize artist talks and panels. Those are all the kinds of things that I work with. It's not just music, but all these things get people through the door. And a lot of times, hopefully there's like that spark. It's like might be someone's first time visiting. Of course, there's people that come all the time that know what we do and can know that they can rely upon us to present something interesting. There's every now and then there are things that we do that perhaps another venue might be jealous of. They'd be like, well, we would have presented that too, or whatever. But then there's also a lot of stuff that we present that if we weren't doing it, no one in the region would. I have to say, it's like also like for me, it's like really personal. Like that's why I'm the curator. It's like I'm choosing.
You're choosing
these
who comes
things,
in.
and I have a backlog of ideas that I'm working on.
Do you get solicited a lot? Like people solicit,
of course,
I want to be there, I want to perform, I want to do whatever.
Yeah,
right?
but it's difficult. Like I said, I've got so many ideas that it's usually, difficult, somewhere between difficult and impossible to entertain unsolicited ideas, which means we say no to perfectly good programs all the time. If I had unlimited resources and unlimited calendar space, then it would be a different story. And also it was like kind of different in my previous life. People did solicit, and sometimes that was how
you got
things, how you filled up the calendar too. But I have other missions and other mandates besides just filling up the calendar. We're not open 7 days a week or 7 nights a week.
So tell me how the museum is really a hub for merging ideas in contemporary art. How is it functioning like that?
Well, we, first of all, are not a collecting institution. That's something that can be a conceptual leap for people, because you think of museum as a collection, but
and it's a bunch of stuff in there.
Also, a place where ideas get presented. You think about like the Detroit Institute of Arts, and they have a permanent collection, but they also have stuff that comes and goes, different exhibitions, and that's what we are. We're always staying current. Our mission isn't to collect. That's not what we do. It's also kind of like there's other places like this too, all around the country. But the actual term for it is Kunsthalle. It's a European term. It's a German term. It means art hall, art home.
So you're like a hub.
Art house. And we every season we change, and sometimes there's connections that are made between themes and stuff, but those are, this more has to do with like the universal condition.
How far out are the exhibits planned? Are you 2 years out?
Years, yeah,
Really?
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
okay.
And again, just like, my job, the public programs, it's like season to season.
It's
to
seasonal,
season.
right?
Yeah. I'm working on early. I'll be beginning to work on January, February,
I
March,
got you.
April.
This fall. Okay.
Yeah. But the senior curator at large, Jens Hoffman, and our director, Alicia Bory Reeder, they and the board and
Right.
all our advisors and everything, and things change, but they're looking at 2018 right now.
Wow.
And
Okay.
things come and go too. Things change, but
So
you have
certainly
to
for
do that in the visual art world. You have to.
You have to be that.
Yeah.
That-
And we're also talking about publicity, organizing the show, deciding what's
And then
going to be
financing
in
and
the
funding,
show,
right.
financing too, writing about the show, having the scholarship,
Right.
and the educational programs around it. That's a lot of work. Whereas there's kind of a pro forma with what I do.
Okay.
I mean, there might be a variety of different styles, but it's the formula. It's also kind of formulaic. You write a press release intelligently, and you hire a sound engineer. You make sure that all the equipment is there.
Right.
And it's the same.
So it's a
in
little-
and out.
for-
I don't have to build walls or hang
paint
stuff on the wall or
necessarily.
paint. Yeah,
Right.
exactly. And I also say what I work with. If it hangs on the wall or spends the night in the museum, that's not what I do. I'm doing
so funny.
the performance, the ephemeral stuff, the stuff that just comes
Out
and
in the
goes.
community
Yep,
and
yep,
comes and goes.
Yep.
What collaboration are you most proud of in terms of your public programming? What exhibit or collaboration?
Well, I mean, the easy answer there, because it's been just so huge this year for me, was collaborating with, and for the museum too, for the institution, was collaborating with Cranbrook and with Nick Cave.
Oh, we've been talking
the
about
artist
this.
Nick Cave.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
That's
the show at
fabulous
Cranbrook
exhibit.
is fantastic, and Nick Cave was a student at Cranbrook in the fibers department in the late 80s. But he was, he says he was like one of, if not the only black person in school up there. And
Certainly back then.
Yeah, and he would come to Detroit, and that's where he said he found his soul. It was really important for him to be here in Detroit, and we came back. And now he's an art world superstar because of his sound suits and his performances. It's just really compelling, engaging material. And when he came back, he insisted that he was like, "We'll do this great, huge show at Cranbrook." It's like probably the biggest survey of his work ever.
Right.
But he insisted that there was going to be programs and performances
And a public part of it.
in
like in
Detroit.
the city.
Yeah, and for free, all around the city too. So he went to Brightmoor and he went to Highland Park. He was right down the street at the Ruth Ellis Center, where actually several times for several different projects. All these different
part
things.
of the exhibit,
All
tied
part
to
of
the
the
Cranbrook
exhibit,
and tied to your
exactly.
organization.
Well, with MOCAD, we were the partner, the event partner for what were called dance labs, and the dance labs involved pairing local choreographers and dancers with local musicians.
Oh, how cool.
And then Nick Cave would provide at the beginning of the week a box, and no one knew what was in the box until it was open.
A box of what?
You didn't know until it was open. But, it's Nick Cave, so it's going to be sound suits, costumes, and such.
And so people would put these on sight unseen?
Yep.
Oh,
yep.
how cool.
And work out, for over the course of a couple of days, work out a new performance, new music, new dances with these objects that they hadn't seen before. And then at the end of the week, they did performances. They did one at the Ruth Ellis Center, they did one at the DeQuinder Cut, and they did one at Campus Martius.
Is there any more coming up?
Well, there's going to be a cumulative performance at the Masonic Temple on Sunday, October 4th.
Okay.
At the Jack White Theater inside the Masonic Temple, which isn't that big. People should, I think, call Cranbrook because
Get a ticket?
Yeah, it's the thing is it's free, but I think you have to reserve it, and they, there was priority given to Cranbrook members. But that's going to have, in one form or another, the 3 dance labs plus other stuff too, probably elements of Heard and his Upright Detroit project, which he did with the youth at the Ruth Ellis Center, and who knows what it's always, this project has always been developing. And the thing was, is like when he presented the boxes, it was laissez-faire. he put it out into the world, and it was up to the Detroit artists
That is
to
so
come up
wonderful.
with something new. And all 3 times, of course, the performers rose to the occasion. It was all 3 events were very special, very different, and and Nick Cave approved. He loved it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
So that was something that's really special. I mean, Nick Cave always been very important to me, just like irresistible. I mean, my grandma was maybe read an article in a newspaper or something about Nick Cave and said, "Oh, Greg, this sounds like an artist that you would be into."
Really?
She was right.
She was right. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back. I want to talk a lot more about Nick Cave. Now we're going to talk about drivers of change.
Detroit Nation with Dr. V. Elayne Arterbery. Lifestyle driven.
Drivers of Change, showcasing to the world the innovators from Detroit, Michigan, and the nation that are shaping the country. Today's driver of change is Charles Bigelow. Kind of an unusual drivers of change today. He's an American type historian, professor, designer. Bigelow grew up in the Detroit suburbs and attended the Cranbrook School, like we've been talking about Nick Cave. He is most famous for creating fonts and developing symposiums on the future of reading. He designed a lot of the fancy fonts that I use all the time: Wingdings, Leviathan, Lucida Grande, Apple Chicago True Type, Geneva, Monaco, and the New York fonts were all designed by Charles Bigelow here in Detroit. So for
those are some old school Macintosh fonts.
Those are some old school Macintosh fonts, but who would have known that they were from somebody from Detroit?
I didn't know, and I love typography.
I know, and you love
this
typography.
is amazing. Yeah.
Right. So I picked a good drivers of change. So let's go back to the Nick Cave exhibit. I saw it a few weeks ago with my mom, and it was unbelievable. The suits, it's hard to describe. I mean, it's costumes, it's textiles, it's
found
history.
objects too.
It's found objects.
He works a lot with stuff that he's found at thrift stores and accumulated suits that are entirely made out of buttons or toys or twigs or found yarn
and stuff. It's hard to explain. It's something people need to see. Well, it's not hard to see it. You've got the public aspect of it, and then obviously Cranbrook has the installation. So it's a wonderful symbiosis together.
Yeah, because we hosted the rehearsals. Like the band, the musicians and the dancers would rehearse at MOCAD during gallery hours, and sometimes people would come just to see that, and sometimes people would be in our cafe because our performance area is also our cafe. And I would, I was kind of monitoring. I was like a gallery attendant, basically. And I would go up to people and say, "Do you know what's going on here?" And if they didn't,
you were playing like a secret shopper.
I would tell them what's going on here.
Oh, that's cute.
And it was pretty remarkable. And sometimes people knew exactly what was going on. Like people who were visiting from Chicago,
right,
would come by, and people would come all around. So there was like the second time we opened a box, there was a big crowd there to see what was in the box.
That is so exciting.
It was pretty exciting. But these collaborations are great. We're not in a vacuum, and I love collaborating with other institutions. It's a great and friendly way to expand everyone's programming and use shared resources.
And it's so important. I was in New York a couple of weeks ago, and spray painted on the Brooklyn Bridge was moved to Detroit. Seriously.
Like as graffiti?
Yeah, like graffiti. Exactly. So there's this whole emerging art culture. I mean, people like to talk about it being underground, but I don't think it's that underground. Is Detroit really going to be the next Mecca for art? You're out in the forefront, so you see it.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it's not. The names that we are reading about aren't really. I mean, it's not that it's emerging. It's like people are noticing more. It's like these things, like like Oil on Me Dabbles or Scott Hocking. These kinds of people, they've been around for 20 years,
Here in Michigan,
yeah, here working in Detroit. I mean, even
almost
more than
anonymously.
That, yeah.
You think that's
no. I mean, it's like people around here knew, but now every 2 weeks there's an article in the New York Times about the art scene in Detroit, talking about these folks, and so there's more attention there, but also, it's a struggle. It's a struggle to get funding. We don't have there's a Michigan Arts Council
Right.
that's excellent, but we don't have like a Detroit
Arts
Council, whereas like places like Chicago and Pittsburgh
have their own citywide, right?
Yeah, that take care of all kinds of different art projects. And we've seen foundations come in with Kresge, with Knight
Right, I've
coming
seen a lot
in
from-
and doing a lot of support and a lot of inspiration.
But
and
it's a
lot
spot
of,
here. It's a spot here. It's not a continuous type thing.
Yeah, and it's also, gosh, I don't know. It's unconventional because, people are expected to have to do a lot of legwork to like match grants, for instance.
Right.
So,
Okay. How do you think contemporary arts fits into culture? How do you think art helps a society be healthy? I mean, I think it's so important to have art in your society, but how does it help the society?
Well, without overstating it too much, because sometimes art, sometimes the picture's just the picture. Okay, and
Right.
sometimes it's there for entertainment, but a lot of times there are political elements, activist elements. We've had, about a year and a half ago, we had a show called State of Exception that looked at migrant border crossing, which is totally, it's
a
always in
huge
the
issue,
news, but like
but
lately
more so
there's
now,
been
yeah.
like such, intense and moving things happening. And the show, which was put together by a curator it came to us from the University of Michigan, by a curator from the University of Michigan, an anthropologist from the University of Michigan, and then a photographer who is, who does photography for like National Geographic and
Right.
stuff, but he's also has his own art practice. He was an artist in residence at Cranbrook actually a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And it was fantastic, powerful, moving, and it had like, you saw, you began to get the scale of
the
things and
issues.
the ordeals that people go through to get to a better life.
Right.
And sometimes people will come in and be moved, and sometimes people come in and they get angry. They're like, we don't want them stealing our tax dollars or whatever, but hopefully they learn something from
Seeing
from
it
from seeing this
and can take
Yeah.
something away.
Yeah.
What is the exhibit you would most like to bring to Detroit? What do you think needs to come here? What types of things need to come here?
Gosh, I can think about music. I have a huge list of music, and I want to see more and more. I would like to see residencies by big people. Like, do you know who Tyandi Braxton is?
No.
Okay, so Anthony Braxton, who's a major innovator in avant-garde jazz and composition, his son Tyandi is also a musician who played in a rock band called Battles, and when he joined Battles, their sound changed. It was very distinctive. He's since left Battles, but he's doing his own thing. And one of the things he's doing is a project called Hive, where he and 4 other musicians sit on these pedestals that have light elements. So there's this light element, there's a performance element. It's very experimental.
Okay.
It's the kind of thing that when it happens in New York, it's happening at the Kitchen, which is a very storied performance art and theater, sound art kind of a place. And I would love to bring that here. But the
that's
thing
cool.
is like it would seem kind of like not the best use of resources just to do it for one night, but to bring Ty Braxton here for like a week where he does
And do different events and a workshop.
and maybe a couple different concerts that not including Hive, and maybe get his dad Anthony Braxton
Right, get
to
him
come,
here too, right.
And Anthony Braxton is really cool. He's been around since the 60s. He made a landmark album called For Alto, which is a double album just of solo improvised saxophone. And that's kind of like just astounding.
Iconic
in the
album.
jazz world, like very, really innovative. But a couple years ago, I was reading this article about an experimental music festival in Quebec called Victoriaville, and I thought it was like fiction because it's talking about wolf eyes, who are like these young dudes from around here who make noise music. Total crazy noise. I call them the Led Zeppelin of noise. They're really well respected and everything.
Okay.
But they're just like these kind of punk rabble rouser dudes. And Anthony Braxton, in this article, is talking about how Anthony Braxton sat in with them and improvised, and Anthony Braxton was calling the tunes
With the noise guys.
and it's true. That really happened.
Really?
That kind of blew my mind. So to have Anthony Braxton come, these are the kinds of things I'm thinking of. And the thing is like we don't have the funds to do something like that right now. Like,
Do you think we have the audience?
That's a good question.
I mean, I think Detroit is this emerging cultural mecca.
Uh-huh.
Do we have the? I mean, I think we do have the audience.
Yeah, it
I
kind
really
of
do.
depends. It's like kind of like with the stuff that we usually do, we get respectable crowds, and that's the other thing too. It's like the Whitney Museum of American Art,
Yeah.
which is a totally prestigious museum in New York City. They have an auditorium there for their performances, and it holds 170 people, which in New York
would say
City is
it's nothing.
Yeah, it's kind of nothing, but it's also kind of that's kind of a respectable crowd.
It's a
for
respectable
music
crowd,
like this.
yeah.
We've had events where we've had like that many people to see, avant-garde instrument builders, like
Right.
really kind of like intense listening experiences. But it's kind of, it's kind of rare, but it's there. And the other thing too is sometimes, like I said, when we do stuff, we'd be the only person in the region presenting it. There have been times when people have traveled from
I
Texas
believe it.
or Atlanta
To
to
see
see
it.
what's happening in Detroit.
I totally believe
Yeah.
it. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back.
You are listening to Detroit Nation with Dr. V. Elayne Arterbery.
One of the things I wanted to ask you, and we talked about it before the show, is what do you think the role of the museum is? And this is really a big part of your job, is to bring young people, to bring people into the museum. When you think about the museum, you think about walking around, looking at paintings. How do you get the millennials, right, to engage? How do you get people who are younger and may not have had gone to museums, with field trips and high schools and stuff like that, because they don't do it as much as they used to? How do you think the museum's role is to engage millennials to come? And how do you do things differently in order to engage that population?
Well, first of all, we're open for tours, and we want to encourage educators
Right.
to come to to MOCAD. But another thing too, like seriously, is like a lot of the music that we brings in young people. It's like the
Right.
kind of stuff that you might read about on Pitchfork, the music blog. This kind of stuff, that kind of like the progressive, alternative. That's one way to bring people in, but also, again, it's about accessibility. Like our next show is a survey of contemporary Latin American art by people. I think there's two curators, and the oldest of the two curators was born in 1972. So that's like their kind of
Right, so they're doing
arbitrary line.
contemporary
Everyone's
Latin
like,
art,
like everyone's been born basically like under 40 or
Right.
43 or whatever. And it's from all over the Latin American world, and I mean we're always looking to connect with all kinds of different communities here. Like one of our best received shows is called Vision in a Cornfield, and one of our patron saints, the late Mike Kelly, who was an artist who was originally from here, made a huge name for himself in California after he left here in the 70s. It was Mike Kelly and his collective Destroy All Monsters, and collaborating with several other people, including Dabbles from Dabbles African Bead Museum, Aaron Ibn Pori Pitts from the Ogun Black Art Movement from the 60s and beyond, and then Ape Technology, who are these people that make robots, like in an artistic performance
How did they
way.
get involved?
Well, that's because like these people, like all they have their ears to the ground.
Right.
There are all these connections that are made and opportunities for collaboration.
Okay.
So this idea of making like this kind of like decrepit swamp inside of
Exactly.
MOCAD with like all these rusted out cars.
I
that have
saw
been
that.
decorated.
I saw that
Yeah.
exhibit. It was during. Was it last year? Was it during de-electricity
Oh
or Noel night?
no, this was a couple of years ago.
Oh, a couple years ago.
Yeah.
I remember the
It would have been
cars.
up for Noel night.
Noel night,
but It was
yeah.
in late 2012.
Yes, I saw that
Yeah.
exhibit with the cars.
Yeah, and they were, the people from Ape Technology made these, they made these hydraulic machinery to make the cars move. That
Right.
would, kind of like they had these sensors, so when you came close, they started shaking and everything.
Oh yeah, it was very
Yeah,
cool.
it was pretty awesome, and a connection to like a very prominent Detroit artist and very prominent international artists.
Mm-hmm.
So that making these connections, bringing it back to Detroit. I mean, not to be the provincial. I mean, we're called Museum of Contemporary Art
Right.
Detroit, but our art is global. Our art is from all around, around the world, but we're making these connections and also looking back too. So we look at the work of famous Detroiters or people that were connected
I
to
love
Detroit,
that.
like James Lee Byers, who was this performance artist who was very iconoclastic, very difficult, but also very seminal, very important in art history. And he was from Detroit, and
I know, it's
people
like
need to know this.
as we do this show, I uncover more and more people that are from Detroit that have made huge impact.
Like Charles Bigelow.
Like Charles Bigelow.
It's amazing. Actually, just speaking about Mike Kelly, finding about Mike Kelly and what he was doing with Destroy All Monsters in the 70s was really important to my cultural upbringing. Because
Why do you say that?
These people who were like just young folks in Ann Arbor in the 70s were making this arty, crazy noise music that you would have thought that you didn't, before things were accessible, they were like a footnote of a footnote. You didn't know what it was. And then all of a sudden there's all this documentation coming out that wasn't around in the first place. And you're like, wow, this amazing music was being made 45 minutes away in Ann Arbor, which is,
Right, it's still
basically from here.
Right, exactly.
Not from New York and not from Cologne, Germany, or anything
And not
like that.
we were
It's
exotic, right?
Yeah, it's like from right here, happening right here, speaking the kind of the same language that, I, was familiar with. And you could definitely tell it was very Detroit, too. Like the times that I would meet Mike Kelly, we talked about growing up freak in Detroit. And
What does that mean,
Channel
growing
20,
up freak?
Like watching, monster movies.
Oh,
and knowing,
okay.
The trash culture, the rock and roll, the underground, 45s and obscurities. I mean, that's what it was, that's part of what it was all about. That's how these people became connected. Like they were into
Back then,
strange, art and everything. And it is to this day too. I mean, I ran into a friend yesterday at the jazz festival, and we started talking about music. He was like, "You are one of two people that I could talk to even about this." So
that's so cool, though, that you bumped into him.
It's always part of there. But the other thing too is like it's not being willfully obscure. It's just it's what we're interested in, and we want it to be accessible. The doors are open. Anyone that comes in knows that like for instance with the Nick Cave stuff and with the State of Exception show, that political anthropological show about immigration, any of these, it's like I'm really proud of this stuff, and I'll talk your ear off about this stuff because I want people to know about it and to know what's going on, because you look at that State of Exception, the immigration show, like the most prominent feature was like this gigantic wall of backpacks, and people just see it, it's like, oh, what does this even mean? But what it is those are real backpacks carried by real people that came across the border.
Trying to get across the border.
Evidence, and there's like hundreds of them, and there's hundreds more
right.
that aren't even up
this
there.
Is just the artistic
like
impression.
This scale. It's like this is what's happening. This is what and. And also too, it's kind of like sometimes there's museums that are like, oh, you can't take pictures, and we're told, oh, you can't take pictures of it originally. And then I went up to the photographer, and he's like, oh, I don't care. He's like, that's a way that people
they share now.
That people disseminate that information, and so it's kind of like with the Kara Walker, like that Sphinx and everything. Like people.
Oh, I love the sugar.
It was brilliant, but like people.
The
were,
sugar
like,
baby.
making, like goofy, goofy faces or whatever, and that's like kind of.
But
like
that's when
the price you pay to get that information out there,
right?
It's like it's the trade-off between having like something that might be considered like maybe disrespectful versus all the other things that are respectful and getting out there. Right. It's worth it.
I am so glad you're here today. I have so many more questions. We're going to have to bring you back,
okay.
Greg. It's an absolute pleasure. This is Dr. Arterbery for Detroit Nation. I'd like to thank our guest, Greg Baise from Baise. Let me get it right. I've been saying it wrong, from the Museum of Contemporary Art. It's a pleasure to have him here today. And remember, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, 313 Nation Radio. And as always, achieve your personal best, then beat it. See you next week.